Afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to spend 10-15 minutes talking about some of the compliance issues, and by that I mean legal and tax issues predominantly that you need to be aware of when you're engaging with freelancers. Before I get into the detail, just explain a bit about Brookson, who we are and why we're here. We predominantly advise freelancers and contractors working in various sectors, creative media, marketing being one, but also engineering, oil and gas. And we're predominantly advising them on the best way to work, so whether they be a sole trader or through a limited company. And through part of that process, we do engage with the agency, if an agency is involved, or with the end client and recruiter like yourselves, just to make sure that the contracts are adequate and the tax position is as it should be. So we've learned over the years quite a lot in terms of how that all fits together. I just want to share some of the things that we've learned with you. Okay, so the first thing really is, from the outset, you need to consider, is it a freelancer that you want and need, as opposed to an employee? And obviously it's important that you get that right for two reasons. One being there's tax implications if you get it wrong, and the other is the employment law issues that go with it. So you can't simply pick whether you are a freelancer or generally self-employed individual or whether you are an employee. It's based on the facts. Freelancers are generally more flexible, highly skilled, and will come and support you on a project, maybe work for other clients. Employee, obviously, the more permanent, maybe lower skilled, and are there to support you with maybe admin and other duties. So you need to think through whether it is a freelancer that you're engaging with. It is important to get it right, firstly, from a tax perspective. If the freelancer that you're working with is operating as a sole trader, then and you're paying them gross without deduction of any tax, HMRC may choose to look at your or their tax affairs, and if they deem them to be an employee, so if they look and feel like an employee, not a freelancer, then pay as you earn should have been deducted, and they could potentially come after you for that. So it is important that you're thinking this through from the beginning. In most instances, it is quite clear whether someone is a genuine contractor, freelancer, or whether they're an employee, but there are some grey areas. And the other issue there is employment rights. So obviously employees get a whole raft of rights that freelancers or self-employed people don't get. And again, it's important to make sure that you've categorised them correctly for those reasons. I suppose one of the key things in determining whether you're an employee or a freelancer is the contract that you're working under. And there's quite a few things that would suggest you put into a contract. I suppose the first thing here is to make sure there is some sort of contract in place. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and find a solicitor and draft one for you. Contract is just an agreement between people in terms of what's going to be delivered. So we do suggest that as a minimum you do write things down. Saves hassle in the future. It gives clarity over what's being delivered, what's being expected. I've listed there some of the things that I think you should certainly be documenting. Obviously the project scope, deliverables, what do you want as a result of the engagement? Make sure that the freelancer fully understands that. Dates and timescales, fees and overruns, so are they going to be charging VAT on their invoices? What you're going to do in terms of expenses they incur, is that included in the fee or is that on top of the fee? A lot of these things sound quite obvious, but there are instances where you get into disputes over these things, and it's important to get clarity from the onset. Confidentiality clause is an interesting one. You may not want the freelancer that's done a particular piece of work for you to necessarily work with a competitor immediately after they've done that and take part of that learning away with them. So potentially you could put some time period in there. Indemnities, warranties, early termination, I'll touch on in a bit more detail. A warranty is essentially a promise from the freelancer to deliver something that's fit for purpose and is in line with brief and is of a good quality. If you're a consumer, there are statutory indemnities and warranties that come with buying a product. But if it's a business-to-business transaction, there are no statutory warranties, so that's why we suggest you document those. And it really is to give you that protection. An indemnity is a protection against losses. So if as a result of the particular piece of work that the freelancer's doing for you, there are some losses, you need to make sure that they're indemnifying you against that cost. And back to the tax on this one, quite often if you're engaging with a sole trader, so they're not operating through a limited company, it's just them, you might want to indemnify yourself against any potential tax that could arise if their employment status is challenged. And again, you can document that in the contract. Intellectual property, as an employee, any IP that they generate vests with the employer under the terms of the employment contract. But if you're engaging with freelancers, you do need something in the contract that makes sure that piece of work is yours, and a copyright is an example of that. If you didn't have a copyright and you wanted to use a written article provided by somebody else, you would have to continuously go back to them to get their approval to use it again. Whereas if you got that documented up front in the contract, it takes away that hassle and potential risk. And another thing to talk about is early termination. So that again gives you some flexibility. You know, if things aren't going well, if you're not getting on with them, if priorities change, funding runs out, you need some mechanism to be able to end the contract early and maybe give you that notice period. Just touch briefly on insurance. If you go into the trouble of putting the warranties and indemnities in place, you need something to fall back on if you ever want to call on that, to make sure that they can afford to pay whatever you're claiming. And it's always good to check that the freelancer's got certainly professional indemnity insurance in place, and particularly if they're working with the public, they probably need some public liability insurance as well, because ultimately they're working for you, so potentially cost of things going wrong could fall back on you. If they haven't got that insurance, then you need to think about your insurance provision as well. Touch briefly on this. The health and safety, obviously it only becomes an issue if something goes wrong, but this is one right that is afforded to freelancers that is also afforded to employees, the right for their hirer to provide a safe working environment for them. So simple things like briefing on fire procedures, if they're working on your premises, it's good practice to be doing that, just to give you that protection. So just to summarise, obviously engaging with freelancers gives you flexibility to grow your business, but do just stop and think when you're recruiting somebody, does this look like a freelancer or is it potentially an employee? And I think the three tips there are, what's the degree of control? Are they obliged to accept any work that you offer, or can they turn it down? And also, can they provide somebody else to do the services under the terms of the contract? Not necessarily have to do that. Obviously document the terms and conditions, that gives you clarity and protection, and consider insurance, health and safety. I suppose the big point to make there is all this advice is given to help you now, but also longer term, as your business grows, maybe you're after funding or selling the business. These are all things that potential purchasers or investors may look at as part of their due diligence process. So it is important to keep documents, keep records of what's been agreed. And finally, just in terms of how Brookson can help, as I say, predominantly we do advise the freelancers that would be working for you on the best way of working. So if there's any concern over their employment status, we can help there. But also if you need some further hints, tips or guidance on contracts and what should be in there, we can more than happy to help with that.